After the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476 AD, there were numerous successor states. Many of these states were what we call barbarian kingdoms. Others were Roman rump states. But there were some states that didn't fit into either category. The barbarian kingdoms are, of course, some of the most famous and longest lasting states that followed in the wake of the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. Some of the most notorious names that come to mind are the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Franks, Vandals, and even Burgundians. But we can't forget that Roman rump states survived the fall of the West. The most famous continuation, of course, being its brother empire in the East and the successor of imperial legacy. But beyond the Eastern Roman Empire, we see several Roman rump states. The realm of Syagrius in northern Gaul, and even the Dalmatian lands under the control of former Emperor Julius Nepos. Then we begin to find realms that are more culturally disconnected and straddle the line between barbarian and Roman rump state. One example are the Armorican Britons, who were a mixture of British and Romano-British migrants from the former Roman province of Britannia. Another example could be the realm of Ambrosius Aurelianus, but it's important to note that his realm, size, location, and even historical legitimacy are currently up for debate. But there is a Roman successor state that does not cleanly fit into either of these categories. The Mauro-Roman Kingdom, or the Kingdom of the Moors and the Romans. Contrary to popular belief, the Vandals did not conquer and hold all of Roman North Africa in the Western Mediterranean. Local Moorish tribes, which had vacillated back and forth as enemies of the empire and as allies, often as foederati, had become Romanized over the centuries since Rome's conquest of Carthage in 146 BC. The first recorded king of the Mauro-Romans is King Masuna. With Masuna, we see a great degree of Romanization. This inscription was written in Latin, in their capital city of Altava. On the inscription, Masuna styles himself with Roman titles, calling himself Rex and King of the Romans and the Moors. Many historians believe that the title of their kings was an imitation of the Vandals, who styled their kings as, quote, kings of the Vandals and Alans. It is seen as an attempt by the Mauro-Romans in challenging Vandal influence in Mauretania. In the 508 inscription, we see that King Masuna built a quote-unquote castrum, which is the Latin word for fortress or castle. This is important as we see continued infrastructure development in the Mauro-Roman Kingdom, while much of the rest of the post-Roman world was experiencing a major loss of infrastructure. A good example of this would be post-Roman Britain. Interestingly, the Mauro-Roman Kingdom was the only post-Roman rump state to conquer lands beyond the borders of the Roman Empire. One can assume the Mauro-Roman Kingdom was wealthy and still maintained most of the Roman infrastructure built during antiquity. We also see from the inscription that Roman bureaucracy and titles survived in the kingdom. The titles of prefect and procurator were written in Latin on the inscription. The given names of these officials are mentioned as well. Interestingly, their given names were mostly of Berber origin, with exception of the procurator of Altava, whose name was Maximus. Historians believe that Maximus was of Romano-Berber descent. We know of several local Mauro-Roman bishops who are named in Byzantine sources. One would be Avus, who was mentioned in a source in 484, and Ulpus Maximus, another Mauretanian bishop who is said to have died in 529. Historians believe that Masuna's Mauro-Roman Kingdom was a fusion of Berber and Roman cultural influences, where both had equal weight. The military leadership of the kingdom was led by Berber tribal leaders, and most of the fighters were from Berber tribes from outside of the cities. though it's important to note that the military was organized on Roman methods. The bureaucracy of the state was handled by ministers appointed by the king. King Masuna showed a preference for Romanized elites from the kingdom's large cities like Altava, Safar, and Castra Severina. Masuna is also mentioned in Byzantine sources. Procopius mentions him as Masanus, who historians confidently believe is in fact Masuna. He was stated to be an ally of the Eastern Roman Empire during Justinian's Vandalic Wars. In 535, King Masuna died. This was only 1 year after the conclusion of the Vandalic Wars. He was succeeded by King Mastigas. King Mastigas continued the expansion of the state seen under his predecessor. By the middle of his reign, the Mauro-Roman Kingdom controlled the entire Roman province of Mauretania Caesariensis, with exception of Caesarea, which was controlled by the Byzantines. Under King Mastigas, relations with the Eastern Roman Empire broke down and all-out war commenced. Mastigas would ally with another Romano-Berber king named Aedouus, who was the king of Aras. The two kings waged war against the Byzantines and the Byzantine ally, King Ordius. King Ordius was a close ally of former King Masuna, but the new Mauro-Roman king Mastigas coveted the lands of Ordius. King Ordius controlled the lands of former Roman province Mauretania Caesariensis, which is the modern-day eastern portion of Algeria. This is a good time to cover the fact that the Mauro-Roman Kingdom was not the only Romano-Moorish kingdom to survive the collapse of the Western Roman Empire. There are at least 8 in total that survived. Often on the maps that you see on the screen, you'll see the Mauro-Roman Kingdom labeled as the quote-unquote Kingdom of Altava. The Kingdom of Altava is considered the direct successor/rump state of the Mauro-Roman Kingdom following its collapse. Another interesting fact is that King Mastigas has his own monogram, which was common practice amongst Eastern Roman rulers and officials. The most famous example, of course, being Constantine's monogram of the Chi Rho. Mastigas also printed his coins with the face of Emperor Justinian on the front and his own monogram on the back, further showing the close cultural and diplomatic relationship between the Mauro-Roman Kingdom and the Byzantine Empire. Mastigas would not see the conclusion of his war, having died in 541, only 6 years after the start of his reign in 535. He would be succeeded by a Greek Byzantine general named Stutius. King Stutius was likely married to the daughter of King Mastigas just a few months prior to Mastigas' own death. Stutius was a former Byzantine general leading a revolt of about 8,000 men in Byzantine Africa. These men were a combination of former Eastern Roman troops, Vandal stragglers, former slaves, and Berber tribesmen. The rebellion Stutius was waging in the mid-530s was happening simultaneously with Mastigas' own war with the Eastern Romans. The two sides appear to have been allied in their struggle against the Byzantines, in some shape or form. Stutius' goal was to declare the Roman province of Africa to be a separate kingdom from the Roman Empire as a whole. Stutius besieged the capital of Carthage in 536, but was forced to withdraw when Belisarius and his army from Italy had arrived. Stutius was defeated at the Battle of Membressa by Belisarius. Despite the defeat, Stutius took very few casualties and was able to withdraw most of his forces deeper into the desert. Shortly thereafter, Belisarius was forced to return to Italy to deal with rebelling Ostrogoths. This gave Stutius time to lick his wounds. Soon, Emperor Justinian sacked Belisarius and replaced him with his own cousin Germanus. Germanus would launch a bribery and amnesty campaign for Byzantine soldiers that wanted to leave the rebellion in Africa. This campaign would largely be successful and would seriously jeopardize the strength of rebel forces in the area. Thus, in 537, Studius felt forced to engage in battle, and the two sides fought at the Battle of Scala Veteris. Studius and his rebels were defeated, due to much of his men defecting to the Byzantine side. Studius took his remaining men and fled to the Mauro-Roman Kingdom ruled by King Mastigas. It was at this time where Studius likely married Mastigas's daughter and succeeded Mastigas to the throne in 541. Studius would continue to wage war against the Byzantines for the remainder of his reign. In 544, Studius would ally with Romano-Berber king Antalas. The two kings would clash with Byzantine general John the Armenian at the Battle of Thracia, where John supposedly personally killed King Studius. Unfortunately for John, he died shortly after the battle from his own wounds. Studius ruled the Mauro-Roman Kingdom for 4 years, dying in 545. He was succeeded by another Greek Byzantine general named John, who had over time become known as quote-unquote the tyrant. John was proclaimed Rex of the Romans and Moors by Studius's surviving troops. It's very likely that John was Studius's close confidant and direct subordinate in terms of military command. John enjoyed greater success against the Byzantines when compared to his predecessor Studius. One of John's first moves as a monarch was to align himself with rebel Vandal forces led by Guntherith, who had seized much of Roman Africa in 546. The two men managed to control Byzantine Africa for a total of 5 weeks, and even executed Roman governor Arobindus. Unfortunately for John and Guntherith, the latter was assassinated by Byzantine general Artabanus. Upon hearing of the assassination, John fled for his life to a local church. He was found shortly after by Artabanus, and John was placed on a ship, brought to Constantinople, and publicly crucified. John marks the final known ruler of the Mauro-Roman Kingdom for the next 30 years. He's also known as the last Byzantine general to rule over the kingdom. The next recorded king would be Garmul in 570 AD. Historians essentially have no idea what happened in the Mauro-Roman Kingdom during this gap. We do know through archaeological evidence that none of their major cities were conquered nor showed signs of battles. This points to a continuity of the Mauro-Roman Kingdom until Garmul's ascension in 570. Garmul, much like Masuna and Mastigas, was either of Berber or Romano-Berber descent. We don't know much about Garmul, as there's no inscriptions left behind from him like Masuna did. We only know of him through his depiction by Byzantine sources. King Garmul was shown to be an effective military commander. He was said to have destroyed an entire Byzantine army in the Roman province of Africa in 571. That same year, Garmul launched devastating raids into Byzantine Africa, killing 3 generals as well. Historians believe that Garmul's invasion of Roman Africa was a collaborative effort with the Visigoths in Spain. This is because the Visigoths invaded Byzantine-controlled Spain at virtually the exact same time Garmul began attacking Byzantine positions in Africa. Historians today believe that timing was too aligned to be a coincidence. And considering that communications between the two civilizations wouldn't have been extremely difficult, there's no reason to believe that the two sides didn't communicate prior to their attacks. The Byzantine emperor at the time, Tiberius II Constantine, appointed a general named Gennadius to destroy Garmul and his marauding army. Gennadius used a civilian terror campaign against Garmul's people, lured his army out, and defeated him in battle in 579. Garmul was killed in battle, and all of his coastal land was annexed by the Byzantine Empire. The Mauro-Roman Kingdom collapsed immediately after the death of Garmul. It was succeeded by 3 Romano-Berber kingdoms: the Kingdom of Altava, the Kingdom of Orsenis, and the Kingdom of Hodna. These kingdoms would persist until the Islamic invasions in the late 7th and early 8th centuries. In their fight against the expanding Islamic Caliphate, the Romano-Berbers would be led by their king Caecilius, who died in the late 680s in battle. They would then be led by a woman named Queen Dia. Eventually, allied Byzantine forces would be defeated by the Arabs in the late 7th century, and the Romano-Berbers led by Queen Dia would follow soon after in the early 700s. Dia has since become a symbol of feminism and Berber nationalism in the modern era. Today, the Mauro-Roman Kingdom is often forgotten. It was a powerful Roman successor state and was the longest-lasting rump state in the western half of the empire. This kingdom would start as a Romano-Berber effort to protect their lands from encroaching Vandals. It would become a military dictatorship led by disillusioned Byzantine generals. And ironically, it would end as one of the last states in the region resisting reintegration into the Roman Empire. Although the Mauro-Roman Kingdom didn't cleanly fit into the Barbarian Kingdom or Roman rump state category, we can say that the Mauro-Romans continued Roman culture in the region for hundreds of years. They fought alongside and against the Eastern Romans throughout their existence, but in their last moments, they put aside their differences and fought for Christendom and the Roman world against the expanding Islamic Caliphate.